Hello, EDF4004. This video is really just about our second assignment. Now, let me kind of preface this assignment by saying this is the first time we've used this assignment, and so we're kind of learning as we go, and that's just being very transparent. So the idea is about trying to ensure that in this unit, you are doing things that you will do in the classroom, and really getting you to think through the various things that you might say or do, because sometimes we kind of just assume that we know them and we know how to talk with parents, but actually getting you to script out and think about what you would say and how you do it, hopefully will just kind of prepare you for the actual actions and behaviors that you will be doing next year when you have your own classroom. So again, I welcome any advice or things that may not be clear. So please let me know, and I'm happy to kind of think through that a bit more. But you really kind of are guinea pigs in that way, that we're just trying this assessment task, and I think that it has some real practical. I think it kind of connects what we've been learning, the theory, to the practical. And I hope you find that that's true. Also, this assessment task is intended, it's only 40%, so it's intended to be a little bit less work, I guess, than the other one. I'm both Pete and Catherine, and then including myself, we have just been really impressed about the work that you've put into the first assignment, and have been amazed by the assessment tasks and the thinking, and being able to link kind of how would this practically work in the classroom with what we know about what the literature says about assessment and reporting practices. So well done on that. So this is we've intended for this to be a little bit less work than the other assessment task. Now the assessment task actually has two components: a written component and then a presentation component, which can either be videoed or it can be done in class in week 12. So I'll kind of talk through that a little bit more. But first, I'm just going to go through the rubric, and we'll talk about the written report. So the first criteria is interpret and explain a hypothetical student's assessment data and evidence. Now, one clear thing that you could do is just use your assessment task that you created for assessment task 1 and use that and kind of think through. And of course, this is hypothetical, so you are creating your own student. Is it a strong student? Is it a weak student? What are the things? So you need to kind of think first, I guess, in your mind, a student. Now, you are creating this for one subject area or learning area. So that's math or science. You're not talking about all of their subjects, you're talking about one. So if you created a maths assessment task, your hypothetical, it's one student in your maths class that took this particular assessment task. That's kind of, where you're narrowing down. You're not talking about everything, you're just talking about that student in that one class. So now for an HD, it says clear evidence and explanations of student progress is provided in a clear, relevant, easy to understand way. So we're not only talking about how well they've done, but they're talking about the progress. So you may kind of have to talk a little bit about where they, what they were doing beforehand and how this particular assessment has showed their progress. Now, if you read what a C is, evidence is provided and explanations are given, but some information could have been made slightly clearer for parents and carers and students to understand. There may be some information that is not needed or relevant. So C is a pretty strong, like, you're doing okay, there's just some minor things to think about. But so if you think about HD and D, there's not a huge difference, and that's always hard to kind of distinguish between, but they're both technically distinctions. But for me, an HD is exemplary. There is nothing I can comment about, like, oh, did you think about this? It was just amazing. D is really, really good, but there might just be some very minor things. C is, there are a few things to think about, but it's not completely, it's not a train wreck. P, there are quite a few things that need to be considered. So hopefully that kind of helps you think about what's the difference between HD, D, C, and pass. But really the big thing is that, can you actually interpret that assessment data? What does that assessment tell you? If they got a 53 out of 61, what does that mean? And how do you explain it to a teacher or a student and a parent so that they understand? The second part, so there's 3 parts. The second part of this is the providing constructive and targeted feedback for future learning. So making some comments about, what they need to do for future learning. And that's a really important thing. So, thinking about Hattie and Timberly's kind of feedback, how do we look at, what do we do next? Now that you've assessed them, what sorts of things should they be working on next? And then the last criteria, C3, is just about spelling, grammar, sentence structure, and punctuation. So this, you're not really, in any of this, are you linking it back to the readings, obviously citing anything, so there's nothing in that regards, because this is for parents and students. The second part is the 3-way conference, and that means with the student and the teacher. Now, like I said, you have 2 options, and we talk a lot about choice. Student choice is really important, so I'm giving you a choice. It's like as I've told some of you before, it's like what I do to my children. You can either have peas or green beans. There's not a massive choice, but it feels like there's choice. So basically what you need to do is you need to decide, if you're very kind of tech savvy, you can do a video and then you upload that on Moodle in the Dropbox, and then you're with your written report and you are done. You can come to the lecture in week 12, but you don't have to come to the tutorials. However, some people aren't really comfortable with using videoing and videoing something and uploading it. So you can then come to class and do it in person. Now, the thing that's a bit tricky, and this is one of the areas of practicality that is that probably needs more consideration, but I didn't know how else to do it, so I've just gone with it, is that it's a 3-way conference. So you need to find a student and a parent to sit in this video or in the live version. So you might think about working in a group, obviously doing your own thing, but that you will appear in the video or the live session with the other person. Some people have asked, can I use my own sibling and my parent? If you'd like to, that's fine. You just need to make sure that it is okay, because there will be, at least I will be able to see it. So obviously no one in the class will, because you're just uploading it to Dropbox, but make sure that that is okay, that they know that I will be looking at it. So that's a little bit of a tricky thing, to try to find someone that's available. If you're really having issues finding anyone to do it with you, come talk to me and we can set up something where we do a mock kind of 3-way conference. But the thing is you're scripting this out. So you're deciding who the student is, who the parents are, and so on. So it's a lot of control. We're not trying to kind of catch you out by, but because you create the scenario yourself. So let's look at the criteria. For the 3-way conference, the first criteria is the conference was clearly planned, prepared, and the student's achievement was discussed. Well, what does that look like? Part of that is that I think in the way that you interact with students is really important, because a lot of times this is an afterthought. There's 3-way conferences and they ask the student, oh, how do you think you're going? and the student says, oh, I think I'm doing pretty well. And that's it. So thinking about how do you actually engage the student in the 3-way conference is really important. Giving specific examples. I was talking to someone, another parent, and she was saying she went to an interview and she was really impressed by this one teacher, because she was asking the student questions but they really had to reflect, like, how do you, it was in regards to literature, and they said, how do you think you best kind of demonstrate your understanding of literature? Do you talk through it, or do you find that you, like, as you're writing, you kind of understand it? And as a parent, she found it really interesting for 2 reasons. One, it really made the student kind of think about how they best, I guess, learned the information. Is it through discussion, or is it through just writing out their ideas? But also she found it really interesting because she found she was very different than her daughter in how she processed ideas. So those sorts of things. How are you going to engage the student? How are you going to get them to respond? Now, it's not about making the student feel uncomfortable, but it's getting them to actually reflect and think about things and be able to kind of allow for an interesting discussion. Now, of course, it's scripted, so it's not going to be organic like a normal conversation would be, but that's just something to think about. How are you going to incorporate that student other than just saying, just talking at the parent and the student just sitting there awkwardly? How are you going to engage that? Because this is a 3-way conference, so you need to kind of think about and plan how you will engage each of, both the student and the parent. So I think that's where the planning is coming in. Have you actually planned for that? And then how have you kind of discussed, in general, well, it says prepared for the student's achievement. So have you provided evidence? How have you set that up? Then the next one is making clear links between the curriculum, the actual assessment or evidence that you have, and or policies that the student and the student's progress. So, there could be, when I talk about policies, there could be something with a VCE of, they have to show a certain amount of, you're guiding them to choose the VCE. Obviously, it says and or, so there may not be policies, but there may be, there may be NAPLAN exams. So you have room to talk about that if you'd like, and how that links. But the big thing here is, how do you communicate those sort of things to parents who aren't familiar with the curriculum and who aren't familiar with assessment practices? How do you actually communicate that? And that's a tricky bit, is how do you make it clear to them, and you back up the, where their student is at through those things, and you make those clear links, but it's also accessible to the parents. The next part is discussing both the strengths and weaknesses and highlighting future learning. So it's very similar to the written task, but understanding that even if you have the best student in the world, there are still things that the student can improve on. So you need to think about how you communicate that, and what you present. Do you present a whole list of weaknesses and then like one strength? How do you manage that? So think about that. And then just communication skills, like effective, eye contact, instead of just, because parents sometimes freak people out, and so they don't even look at them. Turn taking, making sure that you're giving opportunities for the parents to talk if they need to, and having that respectful kind of mutual conversation. So hopefully, the point of this assessment task is really just to get you doing something, thinking about, how you would interact with parents and how you would write out students' achievement. Now, in week 6, there are some various samples, and there's one sample here. It starts actually, so if you open it up, it says report card sample, and it starts with the sample primary, but if you skip down, you will find a sample secondary. So these are, kind of similar to the other ones that gives you, an area to show, this is the subject, this is the name, and you can use this. Now you can adjust it however. I'm not looking at a particular report card or whatever. You can choose what you want to use as long as you're meeting the criteria. So that's up to you how you want to do it. This one has a part 2, but again, this is not, I'm not ticking boxes of you've done all these things. I'm ticking boxes in regards to your to the rubric. So however you want to do it. Now these are all in PDFs, so there's a couple of options. You can, if you have the newer version of Adobe Acrobat, if I just open this up, I can actually go in, if I go edit text and images, I can take out bits here and create it for myself. So you can do that and save that if you'd like. All right, if you have any questions, please let me know. We hope that we'll, there's a bit of a break, and then we have the last 2 weeks. I'll try to put up some videos in regards of sample kind of conferences, but really it's just kind of thinking through what you would do. I think you have the information and the understanding, you just actually have to do it now. So hopefully this helps. For those of you going on placement, I hope you have a wonderful placement, and we'll see you back in week 11.